The agenda is set. Hello, everyone. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. In Russia, if you're openly gay, you can be arrested. So is that a reason to boycott the Winter Olympics there? Pink and going for the gold. That and more today. It's time to talk. In India, it is happening again and again. Young women raped and murdered. From the outside, it appears to be an epidemic. Protests seem fruitless. So who or what can stop the violence? Well, the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia, the whole world is talking about the games now, but for the wrong reasons. In Britain, there are calls for a total boycott to protest Russia's new anti-gay law. But for the athletes and for the gays living in Russia, the best strategy may be to play to win in Putin's own court. And national elections here in Germany are about a month away, and suddenly the voters can't see beyond their plates. The Green Party is campaigning for a weekly veggie day in work cafeterias. So far, the idea not very popular. It's even becoming a little political. Other parties are promising voters, we will not touch your sausage. Well, we have invited three people today to talk, argue, and pry apart these headlines. My first guest is here to make sure that we do not forget to eat our vegetables, I guess we could say. I'm happy to welcome to the show Paula, Riester. I've got a smile on everyone's face here in the studio with this story. Paula, you're a member of the Greens. You're running for Parliament. You're hoping to become a lawmaker next month. Your party is pushing this Veggie Day idea. So we're going to be talking to you in the show about how the public is supposed to digest this idea. My second guest says boycotting the Olympics in Russia will not help the plight of gays anywhere. I'm happy to welcome to the show Klaus Heusslein. He is president of the European Gay and Lesbian Sport Federation. Klaus, you even want to build a gay pride house at the Olympics in Sochi. I'm looking forward to talking with you about that and how you're planning to get a building permit for that right now, considering what the laws are like. Glad to have you on the show today. And my next guest says that on paper, India has made some moves to protect women from rape and violent crime and to better help them when they become victims. But she says on the ground, India remains a dangerous place. I'm happy to welcome to the show Janet Walsh. She is Deputy Director on Women's Rights at Human Rights Watch. Janet, when you look at what is happening in India right now, would you say that it remains a rape culture that refuses to change itself?
I think India has made important changes in response to the awful gang rape and death of a 23-year-old student last December that really caught the world by surprise and horrified not just India but everyone around the world. In response to that, some significant changes have happened, but a lot more has to happen to stop the rapes, to help the victims, and to put the perpetrators behind bars.
And I would say probably in the last 6 months, when the world talks about crimes against women, most people, India is one of the countries they think of. I mean, let's do a flash poll here at the table for a second. Let me ask both of you as well. I mean, when you think about violence against women and against young girls right now, what countries come to mind? Is India one of the countries?
India for sure is one of the countries, but also for example, in Germany, I mean, we have a big problem about violence against women still, and many organizations try to talk about it and try to put it in the public, but we often forget about it. But then, because then we talk about India, and of course it's horrible, but
yes, right.
We shouldn't forget that in many countries we have violence against women.
Is it a matter of just a perception, Klaus? Is that what's going on here? It's just as bad in other places?
I believe that we shouldn't forget about people all over the world, women especially, not having the same rights, and they are sometimes really treated in a way that we cannot even imagine here in Europe, in Germany. We look down to African countries, in some Asian cultures, but even in North America. And as Paula said earlier, even here in front of our own house, we have these problems. and we have to find solutions. And it's good that we talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some numbers on rape cases around the world in just a moment, but I want to stick with India for a second. Just when you think it can't get worse, on Monday, police in India reported that a 7-year-old girl was raped on a train sometime over the weekend. The rapist reportedly dumped her body out at the next station, and then he gave her money. Well, maybe that made him feel better. We don't know. But in any case, the plight of children and women in India is not getting better fast enough. In fact, news of these types of crimes in the country, well, news is becoming disturbingly routine.
A case in Delhi last December led to furious street protests and changes to India's laws. 6 men were accused of gang raping a woman on a bus. The attack was so brutal, she later died. Since then, a string of other incidents has kept the spotlight on women's safety in India. According to official statistics, a rape is reported in the country every 20 minutes. But activists say the number of crimes that go unreported is far higher. The government has now set up special fast-track courts for proceedings involving sexual violence against women. But 7 months into the trials of the Delhi suspects, the case is still grinding on.
Janet, do we know how serious, how bad the situation is in India when we're talking about rape?
The government could do more to know exactly how many rapes are happening, to collect data on that, but we know quite a bit. In 2011, 24,000 rapes were reported, and we believe there were far more that were not reported. The government itself says that rape is the fastest growing crime, that it's growing faster than murders, robberies, other kidnappings. So we know that it's a huge problem. Yeah. We could know more.
We could know more. I want to pick up on some numbers. This morning, when I was tweeting about what we were going to be talking about on the show today, I got a lot of messages from people saying, please look at the UN's numbers, comparing the number of cases of rape in countries per 100,000 residents. And if you look at those numbers, South Africa is number 1, followed by Botswana and then Sweden. But then India comes down on, I think it's position 51, below the United States, below the Netherlands. And when you look at those numbers, you think, well, it's actually not so bad in India. But that's from 2010, the latest numbers we have. And then if you scratch a little bit deeper, you get back to this other point. Are women, do they feel that they can tell someone when they've been the victim of sexual crime?
Well, I think women and sexual abuse against children is a huge problem in terms of stigma. People are afraid to report because they expect to be treated badly by doctors, by police officers, by courts, because it happens so often. And they're also afraid of stigma in their own communities, that they'll be seen as tarnished, that they will not be welcome in their own families and community anymore. Human Rights Watch looked at child sexual abuse in India just this year and looked at government data on this. There was one study that looked at about 7,000 cases of child sexual abuse. Those children, only 25% said that they had told anyone, and only 3% had gone to the police. That says a lot about people's faith in institutions and their fear of the stigma.
Well, I mean, it's telling us that institutions are not working for people, for children or for women. And you're telling me that rape is the fastest growing crime. What does that tell us then about what's happening in that society if that's the crime that's growing the fastest?
Well, I want to say it's not just that society. We've looked at rape in Washington, D.C., in Canada, in Belgium, in a variety of countries just by Human Rights Watch. And the UN, as you say, has done an important work this year. They found that in a global study that 1 in 3 women will be subject to domestic violence or rape in their lifetimes globally. And so, you know, this is a problem for every single country, including India. There are some major gaps, though, in India's laws. I think one that's interesting to look at is a total absence of a protection system for victims and witnesses. When they have reported a crime and they're going to court, there's just not a system to keep them safe in that process. There was a case recently of a 19-year-old girl who reported that she was gang raped. She had accused the perpetrators, went to the police. Yeah. relatives of one of the accused tried to cut out her tongue to keep her from testifying in court.
Okay, I mean, yeah, that's a barbaric story, but what I'm hearing here is the system is failing. And I mean, Paula, you are in the political system here. You know how important it is to have a political system that works for the people. Where is the uproar from the women then? If they are in this culture and there's so many of them, why aren't they lobbying? Where are the women?
Well, I think in India there's protests going on. I mean, there are women who are coming together and who are protesting against it, but it's nothing what you can change in one day. I mean, if you look back to Germany or to other European countries, how rights of women have evolved in the past 100 years, it was lots of work. And a friend of mine, she was just in India this summer, and she told me the story about a middle-class family where the daughter-in-law, she's the last person in the chain. So she's the one, who nobody's looking up to her, but she's the last person in the family. And I think that's how society then works. If even middle-class families, I mean, they're not doing violence to her. There's no rape in this family, but still there's this woman who doesn't have any rights. And I think you have to work with this and show that women have the same rights like men.
Equal rights, but women are seen, despite their numbers, as a minority. And Klaus, you know, by virtue of what you do for a living, minorities always have to work extra if they want to be well organized and if they want to affect change.
That's true. I mean, looking at India in particular, as far as I'm informed, we don't see there any law against marital rape. So I don't know if you can confirm that
right.
properly.
The law does not forbid rape in marriage.
I mean, look back a couple of years, it was not even illegal in Germany. It took a lot of time to get this law in place here in Germany. And we consider ourselves to be a really educated society. So if we want to change the situation in India, we have to go really to the grassroots and educate the people that the marital rape there is not okay. So if we can educate the people there, and probably we cannot do that from here, but that is something that has to happen in India.
What can come from outside?
Well, I'd actually like to talk about what's coming from inside, and there's a lot. So I think we need to give credit to the great women's rights movement of India. It doesn't perhaps always get as much profile as they deserve, but there are amazing activists who've been working for decades who are the reason behind the good changes we've seen so far. We do have a law as of this year that expands the definition of rape, that guarantees victims medical services, that does a number of things that can improve the situation. Mm-hmm. And that really is largely thanks to the great activism of women's rights activists there.
But it still seems like if they are out there trying to make a difference, it almost feels like it's in vain because we're hearing about these horrendous crimes all the time. Is it a matter of perception? Is it a matter of numbers?
Looking at India or anywhere, there are a number of things that have to happen to bring those numbers down. And ultimately, it comes down to leadership in governments really taking a stand that this has to stop. We need better laws. We need those laws and policies.
But those laws have to be enforced, right?
Exactly, and then enforcement.
And then we're talking about the police officers. And almost all police officers in India are men. And I'm just trying to imagine how a society is going to stop rape when the first person or the second person that you talk to after being raped is a man and you're a woman.
Well,
I mean, how do you fix that?
A well-trained man can do a lot better than the poorly trained or insensitive men or women police officers we're seeing handle cases right now. So we do think you need a bigger investment in the laws, in the enforcement, and also in accountability. So when a police officer, man or woman, is failing to take a charge or to help a woman get connected to the services she needs after she's been raped, that person needs to be held accountable. That might be through losing their job. It might be through being prosecuted. But there has to be accountability. But we're really pushing for training of police and also for staffing. I mean, we see there's a massive backlog in the court system. We understand there's a need for more judges, more trained judges, and more investment in the judicial system and legal system overall.
These speed courts, these fast courts for rape that was established, I think they were established back in December. These courts are very slow. They're not fast. They're only fast in name.
Even if they would be fast, I mean, if I hear stories that a judge advises a raped girl or a raped woman to marry the man who has just raped her, just to solve the problem, I'm asking, hello? There has to be done some education also on the higher level. It's not only the police, it's really the judges, as you say, that have to change, and they have the laws. They have to enforce them, and if you are told, "Oh, you're raped," yeah, terrible story, but why don't you marry that guy? Is that a solution?
Well, I mean. Right, it's not a solution.
That is cynical.
But I think one reason why India gets so much attention is because India is such a big country and because India is changing so quickly. Isn't India a classic example of the old system clashing with the new system now, and men being incredibly frustrated by what's happening and feeling like they're no longer in control?
You know, I think India is an example of remaining inequality between men and women.
Yeah.
And that is at the heart of all forms of discrimination and violence against women in India and elsewhere. And so, yes, there are situations where, for example, women in India in some regions are not entitled to their inheritance rights. They are not equal in the workplace. They're not equal at political levels. There's a variety of ways that women and men are unequal in India, and that society is accepting that just too much. And we know that in countries and places where there's a great degree of social and economic inequality, violence is more likely to happen.
We've talked, a lot about what's going on inside. What can come from outside? We've got Europeans here at the table. What can Europe give to India to help the plight of women?
We can hear from the Europeans, but...
what would you like to see, though, first?
Well, listen, there are things that are already happening, not necessarily the European angle, that as well, but there are international systems to support countries around the world in improving their response to violence against women. These are coming from the World Health Organization to help, say, the forensic doctors who is currently in India are not treating victims well enough. There are ways that sort of law reform, police training, judicial training. So UN institutions have a very important role to play.
Okay, but I mean, I'm giving you a great opportunity here, Janet, because you've got Paula at the table.
What can we ask of the German government?
In theory, there is an
Absolutely.
election next month. In theory, she could be in Parliament with the governing powers.
Let me see, Paula, actually, can you do something for women, even beyond India, in the United States, around the world, women who are confronting discrimination and violence against women? Germany does have an important role to play globally, so what's up?
Well, I think with India, I mean, you already said things what Germany or Europe can do. I mean, of course, we can help the movement there, that we support the women's organization and bring them together with women's organizations here or with politicians or the government here. Of course, you can support small projects with money or training, like we said, with policemen. But I think changing the society, I don't think that you can do that from the outside, because
let me pick up.
I want to be honest.
Yeah, and it's good. We have to be honest, because that's going to take us to our next topic, which is Russia and the Olympics, and people wanting to change Russia by exerting pressure from outside. I mean, it's what everyone's talking about right now. Russia, the 2014 Winter Olympics, and what happens if you plan to attend and you happen to be gay. Russia's interior minister confirmed this week that the country's controversial anti-gay law will be enforced at the Sochi Games. Now, that means gay athletes could be arrested for holding hands on the street. The same is true for sports reporters covering the games and even for coaches. There are gay coaches out there. So what should the world do? Should it boycott or should it go ahead with the games knowing that they could easily morph into a battleground over human rights? And what does the IOC need to change to make sure that future host countries understand the rules of fair play and justice apply to everyone, not just to the athletes?
The law Russia introduced in June has sparked protests both in and outside the country. What Russia calls homosexual propaganda is now illegal. So are gay pride marches. People breaking the law can be fined or locked up for up to 15 days. Foreigners who take part can be deported. Russia is an increasingly hostile place for gays and lesbians to live. Attacks on them are not uncommon. But the country is making a big effort to promote itself as modern and welcoming, especially in the run-up to the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. Some activists say the games should be boycotted in protest of the law, but others say taking part is the best way to achieve change.
Yes, so here we are with this topic again, Klaus, of wanting to change society, standing on the outside. Is the boycott the best way to do that?
I don't think so. I mean, we have seen in the past that boycotts have never ever worked in a quick way. They never ever changed something immediately. And we are in close contact with the activists in Russia. We have a membership organization based in Russia. And they share our opinion that if we call for a boycott, they wouldn't benefit from that. What they need is some people who have the courage, who are brave enough to speak up and to be there and show flag. And that is what we try to do. And that is why we don't support a boycott of the athletes in these Winter Games.
Yeah, but aren't you, if you're going to Sochi, you are endorsing the system that you're going to be in. I mean, and with a boycott, isn't that a boycott? I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, Paula, is a way of saying we do not accept what you're doing.
Well, I haven't finally decided if I think a boycott is a good way, but if the IOC was an organization, like a very political organization, who would say we will go there and we will protest, then I would say, okay, then maybe doing the Olympic Games there and protesting would be the right way, but I don't see the IOC doing that.
But the IOC itself, we all know, is very political inside, right? I mean, you know, you said you want to be honest about how things work. The IOC is a very political organization.
Yes, but now they say, before the Olympic Games, they say we're not political and we don't tell our athletes to do this or to do that. And so I think now if the Olympic Games take part there, not much will happen. I mean, maybe there are some protests, but I don't see the big screen in the world where the protests will be on, and I don't see changes in Russia. So, and I think also the governments and the teams. I mean, they also have a responsibility for their athletes, and I mean now they're sending them to a country and say, but if you're gay, then you're not allowed to show it, because then maybe you will be in prison. So
yeah, I mean, you know, wow, thank you IOC for, you know, giving the athletes a country where they could, you know, get arrested in for being themselves. What did you want to say?
Well, I wanted to say that your reflection on kind of the position of the IOC reflects that for the last 12 years under the current leadership, they've really just been very tepid about human rights abuses, about discrimination, and we think that that can change and should change. There's an election happening next month for the new president of the IOC for the next 12 years. We feel that this is a time to really be much more overt about their commitment to their own Olympic charter that says it's about human dignity and about ending discrimination. And so we're really, you know, at Human Rights Watch, we're pushing for the new leadership and even the current leadership to firmly commit to human rights, to having a method of assessing a human rights record of a host country and monitoring it going forward.
Would you say, Janet, from your position, have national governments, are they letting the athletes down by allowing the athletes to go into this environment, knowing that it could be dangerous for them?
Our perspective is that the Russian government is letting the world down by having laws like this. These are repressive and discriminatory laws, and that should change. And the IOC has a responsibility as the body that deals with it. Country by country, I think that there's a decision to be made. Human Rights Watch doesn't, at this point, support a boycott. But what we think should happen is using this event as an illustration of the massive human rights problems in Russia, including the discrimination against gays.
What do you think the German government, since we've got a politician here, what should the German government be doing about this?
Well, I'd love to hear from your German spokespeople here. They're better placed than I am.
I mean, what can Berlin do?
I mean, of course they can talk, but I mean, that's what has been going on in the past years, and nothing much has changed. So, and now our foreign minister Westerwelle, he said he's not in favor for a boycott, but he thinks we should use it as a platform. But he hasn't said more about what to do.
Yeah, but you want to be in power. You want to be in power next month in Germany, right? And you're saying that Angela Merkel, the CDU, the FDP, they've failed us in the policies with Russia. So can you give us an idea of what you guys would do differently to make Mr. Putin see the light?
Well, I think probably we won't be able to make Putin see the light. But if we come to the decision that he's not responding to talks, then we also have to talk about how we work together with Russia, and then not say he's violating against human rights, but then like on an economic way, for example, working together.
Yeah,
so
that's what happens.
Then you have to decide for one way.
We have such a lot of talks, and Ms. Merkel says, "Oh yes, it's not okay what you're doing there." Mr. Westerwelle is doing the same, and all the other politicians that we have heard. So yes, actually, it's really not okay, but I don't see anything really happen. And I mean, what they can do, they can put pressure on their national Olympic committees, which are part of the Olympic organization, to put more pressure on the IOC. The IOC Charter definitely has to be updated. They have to include other kinds of discriminations as like criteria as knockout criteria for host cities. And to go further, I mean, we had 2008, the Olympics in China. We had a big discussion about human rights.
Nothing happened, right?
Did anything change till now? And do we now talk about human rights in China? It has been completely forgotten. And that will happen after the Sochi Games in the same way. I mean, and even if it would have happened, what the high officials in Russia told the IOC several days ago, oh no, don't worry, I mean, for the duration of the Olympics, we will not apply this law, and that has been then completely cancelled a day later.
You don't want to boycott. I mean, you're willing to send the athletes in to an environment where they could get arrested. So what are you going to tell them to do? Act straight while you're there?
Well, I mean, it's always, if you go to a different country, you have to respect the law in place, because otherwise you might face the consequences. That's a matter of fact, and we cannot change that.
And what about this Pride House that you want to build? How's that going to happen?
The Pride House, as we have done it like during the European Championship of football here in Europe, in Ukraine and Poland, which has been completely independent event that the EJLSF has organized there, will not be possible in Russia, because we simply will not have any permission to do that.
So
what we can do is,
what can you do?
And what we are talking about is talking with national Olympic committees if their organization can host it in their own quarter, so that it is part of the National Olympic
the
organization,
umbrella.
The umbrella.
All right, but you're still, it's almost like the Underground Railroad, a little bit. What you're going to try to keep it secret.
Well, it is probably not meant to be a secret, because once you do it, you have also to tell it, at least to the athletes, and to potential supporters who go there.
Yeah.
So we have to publish it anyway. But I don't think that Russia would send a police force to close down. Just for an example, the Dutch or the Belgium Olympic quarter. I don't think that Russia would risk that much of losing its face.
Okay, that's one point. Paula, let me ask you, do you think politicians need to pull back when they're looking at the Olympics and not treat the Olympics as a political event? Because when they do, you guys end up in situations like you're in right now where you have to make uncomfortable decisions.
Well, I think the Olympic Games are something special, and I mean you have the Charter, you have the Olympic spirit. So, and it's.
But is that spirit also human rights?
Yeah, and it's also it's not just some event, some sport event. It's the Olympic Games, and that's also something political, and so. The IOC has also to talk about it. I mean, they can't just say, "Oh, the Olympic Games are bringing together people from all over the world, and it's nice." Well, but then they also have to act to it, but they have to act to it before they decide where the Olympic Games are going to be. So they have to say, if the Olympic Games are somewhere, then you have to assign to the human rights, and if you don't do that, then we do the Olympic Games somewhere else.
Well, the basic point
very
is
quickly, Klaus, we've got to move on.
That for the IOC, apparently the money has a higher value than the human rights, because otherwise, how can you explain to the people that they don't care where they have the games? I mean, if I would be responsible in the IOC, that would be a knockout criteria. Your country is not respecting the human rights because your law is not respecting the equality, and you're discriminating people, then you won't get it.
Well, the only power you have right now, though, like Stephen Fry has said, is a boycott, because that's the only way now you can...
Now it's too late. I mean, now we have to not to change Russia, because we cannot do that.
Right.
But we can change the IOC.
IOC. All right, good. All right, well, listen, we need to move on. We're talking about politics, and that's going to take us to our third topic. Germans go to the polls on September 22nd in a national election. Now, the economy, the Eurozone crisis, personal data protection, and the NSA spying scandal, they all rank as the top concerns. And don't forget about eating more vegetables. Now, the Green Party, in an effort to win more votes, I've got them smiling in the studio again, has made the lunch menu a political semi-hot potato.
Germany's Green Party wants to be back in power after the September elections. It was last in a ruling coalition in 2005. But one suggestion in the party's manifesto hasn't gone down well. The Greens say they want public sector offices to cut down on meaty meals by offering more vegetarian dishes in canteens. The party would even like to see veggie days when no meat is served. In a country where people eat around 60 kilos a year on average, the idea of legislating the traditional lunchtime sausage has many Germans up in arms.
All right. I mean, we've been a little tongue-in-cheek about this campaign today in the show, Paula, but how can a campaign for having a veggie day at work, how can that be put on a platform when you have something like the Euro crisis still breathing down your back and you want to be in power?
I don't know. You have to ask the Bild newspaper who put this on the front page.
But they took it from the Greens platform.
Yeah.
They didn't create the topic.
No, they didn't create it. It's one sentence in our whole platform that has 300 pages. And so, of course, it's one thing. That's our opinion. So we stand for this. But
yeah, I think it's three sentences. But anyway,
maybe it's three.
We don't want to argue over small potatoes here.
Yes, but we were also wondering about why is this topic now discussed so much. I mean, there are so many other things that are way more important.
So, it's the media. That's
well, we didn't. I mean, it's on our platform, but we discussed and decided about 3 months ago. So it's nothing new, and but I think it's something interesting. You know, you can put on the newspaper. Everybody talks about it because about the whole NSA thing and the financial crisis. It's not a topic where all the people are discussing about it.
But it is a topic about freedom, and you know, Germany right now is up in arms about protecting personal data, personal freedom. And you've got a lot of politicians who are saying, well, if you start by telling me that at work I can't eat meat on Thursday, then you're going to tell me that I can't drive my car on Sunday because that's good for the environment. And the Green Party suddenly looks like the party that is taking rights away from people.
Well, I think many people discuss about it now as it's a thing about freedom, but they forget what we actually wrote in our platform, and we never said we want to forbid meat, or we want to forbid that you can eat meat, because we can't do this. I mean, we can only make laws where we have the right to do it, and we can only say. You know, we can advertise for it, and we can say it would be good if you have one day a week in your canteen where you don't sell meat, so that people can think about their meat consumption. But we can forbid it, and we don't want that. But we want to, you know, get a discussion about meat consumption.
Okay, we want to get a discussion about meat consumption. I mean, yeah, it's a good idea. Let me ask you guys here at the table. Is that something a respectable political party in the year 2013 in the middle of Europe should be throwing out into the ring when elections are around the corner?
I was wondering myself why that had been on your platform. I mean, as healthy it might be to eat more salads, more vegetable and all, but does that really have to be part of a political program? I mean, aren't we educated enough in Germany to know that we should eat more vegetable, more fruits, maybe renounce somehow at meat? I mean, many people have to do that anyway because they are living on Hartz IV money from the government.
Welfare benefits.
And welfare benefits, so they cannot even afford to buy meat for 7 days in a week. And I mean,
but it's not about money. It's not about money.
If you are talking about environment, then I wonder, shouldn't we then talk about apples coming from New Zealand, grapes which are coming from Argentina, eating the Spanish carrots while we have them growing here in Germany? Wouldn't that be much more important if we talk about the environment? Because then you have also the pollution to get all this stuff here in Germany.
What?
I mean, it's not a health discussion because I think that people should decide themselves if they want to drink alcohol or if they want to eat healthy or not. That's their decision. It's in our program. It's a discussion about environmental and climate issues because those things you just said, they're also part of the platform. But one big problem is the meat consumption in the world because it takes lots of room, and especially in Africa and Latin America, there are many areas where they grow food like soy and maize for animals to eat, so we can eat the animals. And it takes lots of space, it takes lots of water, drinking water. So many people don't have the space anymore in Latin America and Africa to grow their own food.
Is that a topic that's going to get you elected, though, when you know you're having to open up your wallet right now and save Greece, possibly for a third time in the Eurozone crisis?
Well, it's one of our topics, and so we have many topics, and I know that some people maybe don't like it, but we don't write our program so that people like us. It's our opinions.
Well, you want to get elected, though.
Yeah, of course, but we are a big party. We have 60,000 members, and everybody can write something, and then we discuss about it at our party meetings. So it's not only 10 people who decide about what we will run for, but it's the whole party. And this is one thing that's important also for hunger and poverty in the world, and also for climate change.
Well, I'm a big supporter of full disclosure, so I'll ask everybody at the table: is anyone here a vegetarian?
I am.
Are you? Okay, well, she's with the Green Party. Okay. So maybe if you had, a table full of vegetarians, maybe, the appeal of the platform would be different. I know we haven't heard anything from Janet about this idea. Janet, what do you think about a veggie Thursday at work?
Sure. Well, I'm here on behalf of the human rights movement, and there's a right to food, but there's not exactly a human right to bratwurst, and so I think there's a balancing to be made here. And, I actually think it could be a health issue, legitimately. So governments and political parties have a role to play in promoting public health and promoting a healthy environment, including at a time when there's an economic crisis. I think this actually can relate to that. Exactly how it's done is a different question. We've seen in New York a much harsher measure than what you're proposing on sodas, where Mayor Bloomberg has lost twice in 2 different courts his effort to limit the size of sodas there. So it hasn't gone down well in my society, but you're not actually proposing a ban.
But aren't you surprised, though, and we're running out of time, but aren't you surprised that a veggie day is on a platform in a society where smoking is still accepted and it's not such a taboo as it is, for example, in the United States?
Well, it may be in the other 300 pages, something about smoking. I don't know. I haven't read your platform. But no, I think I've seen my own government play a role in many areas in promoting healthier eating, in promoting the end of smoking for some people, and changing how people live to become healthier. And I think that's legitimate. When you want to spark that debate, which I think is a good debate, I feel like it's unfortunate the news that I've seen and the debates I've seen have really been about freedom.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thanks to everyone for coming on the show. And I bet after Election Day, we're going to be talking about if people are eating bratwurst or not here in Germany. All right, that's going to wrap up the agenda this week. Don't forget, you can watch the show again on our website and on YouTube. And don't be shy. Tell us what you think about the show. Our inbox is always open. You see the address right there. And you can also reach us on Facebook and Twitter at Brent Goff TV. All right, I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. Join me next time when I set the agenda.